The Hoarder. Once upon a time, in a certain village of Japan, there was a very mean old woman. Whenever she saw anyone having something, she would want that. She would say, "If you don't want this, would you let me have it?" Saying this, she would carry it off. One day, it so happened that a neighbor's cat caught a rat. It ate all of it and left the tail. People saw the tail lying and decided to throw it away. Then, one of them jokingly said, "I'm sure that the old woman won't ask for this at least." Gossip about someone and the person appears. And so the old woman appeared. When she saw the rat's tail, she said, "If you don't need this, would you let me have it?" As soon as people heard this, they were shocked. One of them asked her, "What will you do with this?" She replied, "I will make a covering for my drill." Momotaro. Once, an old man and his wife lived in Okayama. They had no children. Every day, the old man went to cut wood and his wife went to the river to wash clothes. One day, while she was washing the clothes, a big peach came floating down the river. It looked yummy, so she decided to take it home for the supper. When the old man came back home, the wife cut the giant peach open. Out came a small boy. They were overjoyed and called him Momotaro, which means peach boy. Momotaro grew up to be big and strong. One day, he decided to go to the ogre's island and defeat the ogres. The old woman gave him some dumplings to eat on the journey. On the way, he met a monkey, a dog, and a peasant who joined him. In return, he gave a dumpling to each. They reached the ogre's island and defeated the ogre, who gave Momotaro all their treasure, and Momotaro returned home victorious. Isun Bushi. Long ago, there lived an old couple who had no children. Every day, they prayed to God and begged for a child. Finally, the old woman gave birth to a child who was as small as the old man's thumb. They called him Isun Bushi. They brought him up with love and care. One day, he said to the old man and the old woman that he wanted to go to the city. They gave Isun Bushi a sword made of small needles, a chopstick paddle, and a bowl as his boat. He reached the city and found himself in front of a mansion. Before long, he became the guard of the princess. Once, he and the princess were attacked by an oni, and the devil swallowed Isun Bushi. He stabbed the insides of the devil's stomach. Overcome with pain, the devil threw him out. Defeated, the devil fled away, leaving behind his magical hammer. The princess used the magical hammer to make him a full-grown, handsome warrior. They got married and lived happily ever after. Tongue-cut sparrow. Once upon a time in Japan, there lived a kind woodcutter and his greedy wife. One day, while he was collecting wood, he came across an injured sparrow. He took it home, fed it, and nursed it. The sparrow sang for him and made him happy. But his wife did not like animals and birds. So, she was angry with him because she thought that he was wasting his time with the sparrow. One day, when he was out in the forest, his wife was cooking in the kitchen. She left some flour in a bowl and went away. When she came back, she saw that the sparrow was eating flour from the bowl. Furious, she grabbed the sparrow, took out a pair of scissors from her pocket, and cut the sparrow's tongue. Quickly, the sparrow flew away. When the old man returned home, he searched for the bird. He went to the forest to search for the sparrow, and with the help of other sparrows, he found her in the sparrow's inn. The baskets. The sparrows treated the old man kindly. When he was about to leave, the sparrows offered him a gift. They gave him 2 baskets, one big and one small. They asked him to choose one. The old man chose the small basket. He thanked the sparrows and went home. Upon reaching home, he opened the basket. It was full of treasure. The greedy wife went to the sparrow's inn and asked for the bigger basket. The sparrows accepted her wish and gave her the basket. She opened the basket on her way. It contained snakes and poisonous bugs. Trying to escape the snakes, she tripped and tumbled down the cliff. The old man was awarded for his kindness and humility, and the old woman was punished for her greediness and ill behavior. Urashimataro. Long ago, in a faraway village along the coast of the Sea of Japan, lived a young fisherman named Urashimataro. He lived with his old mother. One morning, he went down to the shore for fishing. He saw 3 boys torturing a turtle with heavy sticks. Taro screamed at the children, "Hey, get away from it! Stop hurting the turtle!" Scared, the boys left the turtle and ran away. Taro released the turtle back into the sea. The next day, Taro went again to the shore. He saw the turtle's head poking out of the waves. The grateful turtle said, "I am the turtle you saved yesterday. I owe you my life. I want to thank you for saving a turtle's life and want you to come with me to see the Dragon Palace." Taro was shocked to know that there was a dragon palace deep into the sea. the Dragon Palace. Taro was excited but felt that he could not leave his mother alone at home. He said, "I cannot leave my mother alone." Hearing that, the turtle assured Taro, "We won't be long there. You will return here again." Taro was happy and accepted the invitation. Thereafter, he quickly climbed onto the turtle's back. Then, the turtle dived deep into the sea. They journeyed for a while and reached a castle that glittered with gold and silver. It was the Dragon Palace. The attendants welcomed him. A beautiful princess came out of the palace. She was accompanied by her ladies and a host of fish. She was Princess Otohime. She said to Taro, "Yesterday you saved a turtle's life. Please enjoy your stay here as long as you wish." The gift. The princess took Urashimataro into the palace. A huge banquet was laid for him to eat, drink and enjoy. He dined and drank. The fish entertained him. Taro was captivated and forgot the life he had before arriving at the palace. Years passed away. Finally, he came out of his spell and suddenly remembered his old mother. He decided to return home. As a goodbye gift, the princess gave him a tamate bako and said, "This precious box will help you whenever you will be in trouble. Open it up when you are in trouble." He took the box, bade farewell to the princess, and climbed onto the turtle's back and returned to the beach. He was puzzled when he arrived back to his village. Rivers and mountains had changed and trees had withered. No one recognized him. He ran towards his home to find his mother. Taro's mother was nowhere to be seen. Taro's transformation. An old farmer approached him and asked, "Who are you?" Taro replied, "I am Urashimataro. This is my house. I am looking for my mother." The old farmer said, "I have heard my grandfather saying that when he was young, a fisherman by this name used to live here with his mother. But that was 100 years ago. It was believed that he journeyed to the Dragon Palace and never came back. You cannot be Taro." Taro felt lost and did not know what to do. He carried the box and went back to the sea. He remembered the words of the princess and opened the box. There was a crane's feather inside it. Suddenly, white smoke came out and he became a hunched old man with a long white beard. Taro was flabbergasted. At that moment, the crane's feather blew onto his back. In a flash, he was transformed into a crane and flew away. The man who did not wish to die. Long ago, there lived a man named Centauros. He lived on a small fortune inherited from his father. Suddenly one day, the thought of death and sickness overpowered him. The thought of falling ill or dying made him sad. "I want to live for 500 years, he said to himself. Centauros had heard numerous stories of the emperors in history who had lived for thousands of years. Many a time he had heard the tale of the Chinese king named Shikoku. He also never wished to die. The Chinese king had sent his servant Tofuku to Horizon. There, hermits lived who possessed the secret of the elixir of life. The one who drank the elixir of life lived forever. But unfortunately, Tofuku never returned to the Chinese king. Now, Centauros was determined to find the hermits and get the water of eternal life. As a child, he had heard that hermits lived on Mount Fuji. So he started out on his quest. Centauros meets Tofuku. Centauros reached Mount Fuji but could not find Horizon. So he decided to go to the shrine of Tofuku, who was worshipped as the patron god of the hermits. He prayed for 7 days. On the 7th day, when Centauros was kneeling in the temple, the door of the innermost shrine flew open, and Tofuku appeared in a gleaming cloud. Tofuku told him that Centauros had lived a life of comfort and would not be able to live a life of hermits. The life of hermits would be too difficult for him. However, he would send Centauros to the country of perpetual life, where people lived forever. Saying this, Tofuku gave Centauros a small crane made of paper. He asked Centauros to sit on its back, and it would carry him to the country of perpetual life. Quickly, the crane grew large enough for him to ride on it. The crane spread its wings, rose high in the air, and flew away. The land of perpetual life. After a few days, they reached an island. Centauros jumped down from the bird's back. The crane reduced itself in size, folded up of its own accord, and flew into his pocket. Centauros looked around in amazement. All the people around were affluent, so he decided to stay there only. But after some days he realized that everything was topsy-turvy. Centauros wished to live forever, but the people of the island were tired of living and wanted to die, so that they might go to paradise. They even ate poison to die, but nothing seemed to work. But Centauros said to himself, "I will never grow tired of living. I want to live for thousands of years and enjoy life." He started his business and stayed for 300 years. At last he was tired of living on the island. He longed to go to his own country and his home. Centauros' dream. Centauros prayed to Tofuku to send him back to his own land again. As soon as he prayed, the paper crane popped out of his pocket. Centauros was shocked to see that it had remained intact for so many years. The crane grew in size and Centauros jumped on its back. It flew in the direction of Japan. Suddenly, a storm came, and the magnificent paper crane got wet, crumpled up, and fell into the sea. Afraid, he prayed to Tofuku to save him. Centauros woke up in front of the shrine, only to find that it was all a dream. An angel appeared and told him that now he had seen the land of perpetual life, and he didn't want that. He also didn't want to die. The angel told him to go home and live a good life. Centauros did that and he prospered. The bamboo cutter. Long ago, there lived an old bamboo cutter named Taketori no Okina. One day, while walking through the forest, he saw a glittering stalk of bamboo. He went and picked it up. Wanting to know what made it shine, he cut it open. Inside was a beautiful and tiny little girl, about 7 centimeters tall. In wonder, the man took her home to show it to his wife. They named her Kaguya-hime. From now on, whenever the old man cut a stalk of bamboo, he found gold and gems in it. Soon he became a rich man, and Kaguya-hime grew into a beautiful girl of normal size. The word of her beauty spread, and suitors from all over came to marry her. But she refused to take any husband. The emperor came to know about Kaguya-hime and requested her to appear in the court. She refused. Then the emperor visited her, and upon seeing her, he fell madly in love with her. Princess Moonlight. The emperor wanted to marry her and take her to the palace. But Kaguya-hime always refused him. She was sad and shy and never left the house. One day, she told the bamboo cutter that she had come from the moon. She was Princess Moonlight and finally would have to return home. Suddenly, the sky grew darker, and the carriage manned by luminous beings descended to the earth. It was time for her to go back. Kaguya-hime gave a letter and a small bottle of elixir of life to the bamboo cutter for the emperor. The emperor was filled with sorrow on reading the letter. He wrote a letter to Kaguya-hime and ordered his men to climb to the top of the great mountain in the Suruga province and burn both the letter and the elixir of life. Thereafter, the great mountain came to be known as Immortality, which is translated as Fuji. Even today, it is believed that whenever there is smoke upon Mount Fuji, it is the letter and elixir. The Bowelbearer Princess. A very long time ago, a rich man named Toyonari Fujiwara lived in Nara, the ancient capital of Japan. His wife was a kind and beautiful woman named Murasaki. When they were young, they were married according to the Japanese customs. Since then, they had happily lived together. Their only cause of sorrow was that for years they had been childless. Their prayers to Hase Kanon were finally answered by the birth of a girl. She grew up to be a beautiful girl. At the time of her mother's death, she was 13 years old. According to the prophecy of Hase Kanon, a large bowl of treasure was placed on her head. Something strange happened, and the bowl did not come off. After her mother's death, her stepmother forced her to leave the house. The bowl breaks. Upset, Hachikazuki decided to end her life. She jumped into the river, but the bowl on her head saved her from drowning. A lord rescued her and appointed her to work as his maid. The fourth son of the lord proposed her for marriage. The lord's wife was against the marriage. To break the marriage, the lord's wife ordered Hachikazuki to compete with her other daughters-in-law. She thought that Hachikazuki would be embarrassed and would herself break off the marriage. That night, the bowl ultimately fell off from her head. The treasure scattered on the floor. She collected the treasure. The next day, she performed brilliantly, displaying both beauty and talent. Hachikazuki and the lord's fourth son got married and were soon blessed with children. One day, Hachikazuki went to pray to Hase Kanon. There, she met her father and was happily reunited with him. The Mirror of Matsuyama. Long ago, a couple lived in the remote part of Japan with their only daughter. She was beautiful and they loved her tenderly. One day, the father had to go to Kyoto for business. Before leaving, the father told his daughter that if she behaved properly and listened to her mother, he would get a gift for her. He then departed for his journey. The mother and the daughter watched as he went away. The father returned after a month. His wife and daughter welcomed him. He took off his hat and sandals and sat on the floor. Then he opened his bamboo basket. The daughter eagerly watched him. He took out a wonderful doll and a lacquer box of cakes from the basket. He gave them to his daughter. Now, he took out from his basket the magnificent metal mirror. The man gave the mirror to his wife. A mother's gift. The wife was amazed to see such a mirror. Its convex surface shone brightly, while upon its back there was a design of pine trees and storks. He said, "Look and tell me what you see inside." When she gazed into the mirror, she was filled with wonder. she saw looking at her a smiling face of another woman. The man explained the mysterious treasure, and she carefully kept it among her treasure. After a few years, the loving mother felt sick. Just before she died, she had called her daughter and said, "Dear child, I am very sick and will soon die. After my death, take care of your father. Take this mirror which your father gave me long ago, and when you feel lonely, look into it, and you will always see me smiling at you." She passed away, and in due time, the man married again. The stepmother. The stepmother was not kind to her stepdaughter, but the little one, remembering her mother's words, would sit in a corner and eagerly look into the mirror. One day, the stepmother saw the girl stooping in the corner of the room. She was staring at an object and talking to herself. The stepmother rushed to her husband and told him that the girl was trying to kill her through witchcraft. The father was furious to hear this and quickly went to his daughter's room. The girl was surprised and quickly hid the mirror under her sleeve. The father got angry at this suspicious behavior and started to believe what his wife had said. "What have you hidden in your sleeve?" asked her father. She replied, "The mirror you gave my mother, and which she on her deathbed gave to me. Every day, I look into the mirror to see my mother and speak to her. It gives me peace and helps me to bear hard words." A new beginning. All misunderstandings were cleared. The father understood and loved his daughter even more. The stepmother overheard their conversation and felt ashamed. She apologized for her behavior and asked for forgiveness. The girl, who believed she had seen her mother's face in the mirror, willingly forgave her stepmother and never bore any malice towards her. They all lived happily together. The idea that a mirror can steal one's soul is a common belief in many cultures. In Japan, there is a strong tradition of respecting and honoring one's parents. This story is an example of what it is to be a good daughter. She endured the ill treatment of her stepmother without wishing ill. The daughter still cherished the memory of her real mother. Both the father and the stepmother were touched by the daughter's love for her mother. The Goblin of Adachiahara. Once upon a time in Japan, there was an awful goblin. He roamed about in the woods of a province known as Adachiahara. People were afraid of the goblin as he killed everyone who came in its way. The goblin also had the ability to transform itself. It often took the garb of an old woman and lured strangers into its cave. Some people believed that the goblin laid an underground trap, while there were others who said that he was an ogre because people kept disappearing without any trace. Some learned and educated people did not believe in such stories. One day, a young Buddhist priest was walking across the plains of Adachiahara. He had heard the stories of the goblin but did not believe them. The priest walked for hours. It was getting dark and he did not find any place to spend the night. The old women. The priest believed in the Buddha's protection and so started praying. As soon as he finished his prayer, he saw a small light glowing in the distance. The light was coming from a tiny, decaying cottage. He went closer. The window of the house was broken. He looked through the window and saw an old woman sitting at her spinning wheel. He felt happy and rushed towards the door. The priest greeted the woman and said that he was a tired traveler and new in this land. He asked for permission to spend the night in the cottage. The old woman opened the door and said, "Come in and warm yourself." The priest sat comfortably beside the fire while the old woman cooked supper. She served him a bowl of rice. While they ate, they talked about the trivia of life. The warning. It was getting late and the fire began to die down. The priest said that he would go and fetch some wood. The women immediately got up and said, No, you are my guest. I will go out and get the wood. You stay here." So she set out at night. The cold wind was blowing. She had gone only a few steps ahead that she returned and said, "Young man, please do not go at the back of the house when I am not here." Before the priest could ask her the reason, she had left. For a few seconds, a strange sensation in his stomach and a feeling of uneasiness crept up his spine. What could be at the back of the house? He thought aloud. He hazily remembered the stories about a goblin who haunted these very woods. Foolish people, he said to comfort himself so that he may not get scared. But he decided to go and at least have one look at the back of the house. The goblin appears. The priest quietly went at the back of the house. He saw a door. Slowly, he opened the door. He almost fainted at what he saw. The room was filled with human bones. Gathering all the courage, he rushed out of the front door. So the priest thought that it was true that the Goblin of Adachiahara did exist. While he was running, someone called him from behind. "Stop! Please stop!" But the young priest did not stop. He turned around and saw that the woman had become a frightful creature. It was chasing him with a knife in its hand. The priest kept running. After a while, when he felt his strength failing, dawn broke on the horizon. The sun came out and the goblin disappeared. Now the priest knew that he had met the Goblin of Adachiahara. He prayed and thanked the Buddha for protection. From that day on, he told everyone that he had met the goblin. The Hunter and the Fisherman. Long ago in Japan, there lived two brothers. Hori was generous and a happy hunter. He hunted to feed the family. Hoderi was greedy. He spent his days fishing only for himself. There was always a silent competition between them. One day, their deity parents gave a magical hook to Hoderi and a magical bow to Hori. Hoderi was very proud and thought that he could also hunt like Hori. So he asked Hori to swap their gifts for a day. Hori did as his brother said. Hori headed to the sea to catch fish and Hoderi went to hunt. Hoderi couldn't hunt with Hori's bow. Hori also fished for many hours but had no luck. Moreover, he also lost Hoderi's hook in the sea. He tried to find it, but he failed. Hoderi was angry. "You must find my fishing hook, and you may not come back home until you have." The lost hook. Disappointed, Hori walked back to the edge of the sea. He jumped into the water. Down and down he went. At last, he reached the bottom. He saw the beautiful maiden Toyotama Hime, the princess of the sea. They fell in love with each other and got married. The king of the sea ordered all the fish to look for the hook, which they found easily. The king of the sea also gave him a magical shell to control the sea. Hori rowed up to the shore to return the hook to his brother. Hoderi was sitting at the horizon waiting for him. He was furious because he had hoped that Hori would never come back. Hoderi tried to kill him. Hori took out his shell and whispered, "Bring up the sea." The waves engulfed Hoderi and he started getting drowned in the middle of the sea. Hoderi asked for forgiveness and promised never to be too competitive. Hori ordered the waves to take Hoderi to the shore. The Old Man and the Dog. Once there lived an honest man with his wife. They loved their pet dog and raised him with affection. One day, when the old man was working in the garden, the dog began barking. The old man began digging there. They found a box full of gold pieces. The stingy neighbor heard the story and borrowed the dog. He took the dog in his garden. The dog stopped at a place and started sniffing. The neighbor started digging. He found nothing but the dirt and garbage. Furious, he seized the dog and killed it. He told the couple that the dog had just dropped dead. They cried and buried it under the pine tree where they had found the treasure. That night, when the honest man was fast asleep, the dog appeared in his dream and thanked him. The dog told him to cut down the pine tree and make a mortar from it. The old man made withered trees blossom. The old man did as the dog had said. When he ground his rice in it, each grain of rice turned into gold. The stingy neighbor borrowed the mortar, but when he used it, the rice turned to foul-smelling berries. Angrily, he broke the mortar and burnt it. One night, the dog again appeared in the old man's dream and told him to take the ashes of the burnt mortar and sprinkle them on the withered trees. When he did, the cherry trees bloomed. The neighbor also tried to do the same, but the ashes blew into the eyes of the landlord, which ultimately led him to prison. When he came out of the prison, the people of the village did not let him live there. His wickedness made it difficult for him to find a new home. The honest old man, on the other hand, became rich with the treasure of gold. He led a long and happy life and was respected by all. The Sagacious Monkey and the Boar. Once upon a time, in Shinshin in Japan, there lived a monkey man who used to travel to different places and showed monkey tricks. This was his only source of income. One evening, when the man returned home, he was in a very bad mood. He told his wife to send for the butcher the next morning. The wife was confused and asked the man, "Why do you wish me to send for the butcher?" He replied, "This monkey has become useless. He has become old. He forgets his tricks. Even if I beat him with the stick, he does not move. So I will sell him to the butcher and earn whatever money I can." The wife felt bad for the monkey. Now, the monkey was standing outside the room and overheard the entire conversation. The monkey thought that his master was cruel. He thought, "I have served him faithfully for years, and now he is selling me off to the butcher to be sliced?" The Boar's Plan. The monkey thought, "What should I do?" An idea struck him. He knew a wild boar who lived in the woods nearby. He had also heard about the boar's wisdom. "I will go to him and tell him the problem I am in. He will give me the right advice, he said to himself. The monkey slipped out of the house and rushed towards the woods to find the boar. The boar was at his home, and the monkey started his story. Mr. Boar, I have heard about your knowledge. I am in great trouble. The monkey told him his story. What do you advise me to do? The boar thought and then said, Does your master have a baby? Oh yes, said the monkey. He has one infant son. Doesn't it lie by the door when your mistress begins the work of the day? Then I will come, and seizing the opportunity, I will grab the child and run off with it. The boar and the child. The monkey asked, What will happen then? Before anyone comes, run after me and rescue the child. Then safely take him home to his parents. Now they will not be able to sell you to the butcher, as you have saved their child. The monkey thanked the boar and returned home. The next morning, everything happened as planned. The mother placed her child near the patio and started with her household chores. Suddenly she heard the child screaming. She ran and saw the boar hurrying through the gate carrying the child. She raced in and called out to her husband, who was still sleeping soundly. He got up and asked her why she was making such a noise. When the man understood what had happened, they both went out. But the boar had already ran away with the child. The faithful monkey. The man and his wife saw the monkey running after the hooligan. The monkey ran as fast as his legs could carry him. The couple admired the fearless and sagacious monkey. Their appreciation knew no bounds when the faithful monkey brought the child safely back to their arms. The wife said, "This is the animal you wanted to kill. If the monkey hadn't been here, we would have lost our child forever." "You are right," said the man as he carried the child into the house. "Send the butcher back when he comes. And now give all of us a good breakfast and the monkey too." When the butcher arrived, he was sent away. The monkey was pampered and lived the rest of his days in peace. The man never beat him again with the stick. The Fox's Wedding. Long ago, there lived a young white fox named Fukuyemon. After reaching a certain age, he decided to marry. He got rid of his forelock and started searching for a beautiful bride. One day, his aunt came to meet him. She told him about a beautiful young lady fox who was famous all over for her beauty and charms. She also had a lovely fur that made her attractive. As soon as the young white fox heard about her, he was keen on making her his wife. Soon, A meeting was arranged between them. They both liked each other and decided to marry. The young white fox sent the wedding gifts to the bride's house. The bride's parents gladly accepted the gifts. The date of the wedding was fixed. After the initial ceremonies, the lavish wedding was conducted. The bride and bridegroom lived lovingly together. The little foxes. Soon, a litter of little foxes were born to them. The grandfather was filled with joy. He treated the little foxes so lovingly and gently, as if they were tender like flowers. "They are so much their great-grandfather," said the white fox, "as like as possible." Also, the little foxes were so healthy that they would never need a doctor. When the little foxes grew up, they were carried off to the temple of Inari-sama, the patron saint of foxes. The old grandparents prayed for their well-being and to keep them away from dogs and other ills which loved to eat the flesh of a fox. As time passed by, the white fox grew old and prosperous. His children kept increasing year by year. He was so happy in his business and family that every spring gave him a new reason for joy. The Jellyfish and the Monkey. Once upon a time, the queen of the dragon palace was about to have a baby. She had a weird craving. She wanted to eat a monkey's liver. The Dragon King wanted to fulfill her wish. He called the turtle and asked him to get the liver of a monkey. He at once went out and reached one of the islands of Japan. He saw a monkey playing near the seashore. The turtle asked him, "Dear monkey, would you like to come as a guest to the Dragon Palace to see the mountains?" The monkey agreed and went along with the turtle to see the Dragon Palace. The turtle went inside the palace and asked the monkey to wait at the entrance gate. The gatekeeper, the jellyfish, looked at the monkey and started laughing. The jellyfish approached the monkey and said, "Dear monkey, do you know that the queen wants to eat a monkey's liver? That is why you have been brought here." Why the jellyfish has no bones. After a few minutes, the turtle came out. The monkey said that he had forgotten his liver hanging on a tree. He hung it to dry in the sun. If it rained, it would get wet. So he wanted to go back to the tree to get his liver. The turtle carried him back to the seashore. When they reached the land, the monkey quickly jumped off and climbed the top of the highest tree. The monkey mocked the turtle and said, "Inside the sea, there can be no mountains. Outside the body, there can be no liver. Disappointed, the turtle returned to the sea. He went to the Dragon King and said, "The loose-tongued jellyfish must have told the monkey everything while the monkey waited at the gate." The king was furious and said, "Remove all his scales off. Take out all the bones." That is why the jellyfish has no bones and has this shape which it has now. Why the monkey's tail is short. Long ago, the tail of the monkey used to be 33 fathoms long. One day, the monkey went to the bear's house and asked him the best way to catch numerous river fish in one go. The bear advised, "On a cold night, go to the river. Look for the deepest place in the river and then sit on a rock over it. Let your tail down into the river. Many little fish will come and tie up to your tail." The monkey willingly did as told. As night deepened, his tail grew heavier. The monkey thought that the fish were attaching up to his tail. But in fact, the ice was spreading over the river. "This is enough to catch. I want to go home because it is too cold." He tried to pull up his tail, but he could not. "This is dreadful," he cried. Finally, he pulled it hard and his tail broke off. The obedient pigeon. Once upon a time, there was a wicked pigeon. He was disobedient and never listened to his mother. Whatever she said, he did the opposite. If she asked him to go to the mountains, he would go to the field. When his mother was on her deathbed, she thought, "I want to be buried on a quiet mountainside. But if I say so, my son would do the opposite." So she asked him to bury her in the sandbar of the river after her death. When she died, for the first time, the pigeon realized that he should have listened to his mother. So, now, he did what she had said. He buried her in the sandbar along the river. Soon, the rain started and the river began to rise up. The pigeon was worried that the grave would be washed away. So, whenever the weather is rainy, the pigeon recalls this and cries, "Tofuku, poor dear mother." Bag of rice. Long ago, Fujiwara Hidesato went out in search of adventure and came across a bridge. He saw a huge serpent coiled around it. He walked ahead and stamped on its head. The serpent vanished, and in its place stood a beautiful woman. She said, "I have been waiting for years to find a man brave enough to help me." She requested him to destroy her enemy Omukade, a giant poisonous centipede, which had killed her sons. Hidesato promised to help her. Armed with a bow and arrows, he awaited the centipede. Soon, he saw the centipede approaching. Each of his legs glowed with shades of gold and green. His eyes looked like enormous lights. Hidesato sent 3 arrows in that direction, and the centipede died. Filled with gratitude, the dragon woman took Hidesato to the dragon palace and rewarded him with a piece of silk, a sword, an armor, a temple bell, and a bag of rice. She said that the bag of rice would never be empty as long as he lived. Centauro at Ashigara Mountain. A beautiful princess, Yaegiri, and a samurai Sakata had a son named Kintaro, or the Golden Boy. To protect his son from the fight going on between Kintaro's dad and uncle, Yaegiri decided to take Kintaro to Mount Ashigara. Kintaro was very strong from the day he was born. One day, he went out with his friends to play in the mountains. Walking along, they came to a bank of river flowing through a valley. All his friends wondered how they would cross as there was no bridge. Kintaro said, "I will make a bridge for you." He pushed a large tree and it fell over and spanned the river. Suddenly, someone called out from behind and said, "What unbelievable strength!" When he turned around, he saw a great samurai, Yorimitsu Minamoto, and his followers. He suggested Kintaro to become his follower. Kintaro was happy and accepted Yorimitsu's offer to become a follower of the most famous samurai in Kyoto. Kintaro went to Kyoto and was trained in martial arts. He became a powerful warrior. The Ogre of Rashomon. Long ago, it was believed that there lived a brutal ogre in the city of Kyoto. The people of the city said that the ogre haunted the gate of Rashomon at twilight, and he killed everyone who passed through the gate. So no one used that gate. During this time, there lived a general named Raiko in Kyoto. He was famous for his brave deeds. Some time ago, Raiko had attacked Oyama, where a band of ogres lived with their chief. He had killed them, and the whole city praised and honored him. Now, this brave warrior was always followed by a band of faithful knights. The band had 5 knights with great courage. One night, all the knights were having a feast. They all had their rice bowls and were eating all kinds of fish, raw and stewed and broiled and toasting one another's health and courage. The Brave Knight. The first night, Hojo told the others about Ogre at the gate of Rashomon and that he would kill anyone who passed by. One of the knights, Watanabe, did not believe it and said, "There can be no ogre at the gates of Rashomon. We have killed all the ogres." When the other knights accused him of being afraid to believe, he agreed to go there and investigate. To show how brave he was, he asked all the other knights to write their names on a sheet of paper. He would stick that paper on the gate. "Tomorrow, go there and see if the paper is stuck on the gate or not." Watanabe set off towards the gate. It was dark and rainy. When he reached the gate, he stuck the paper on it and turned back to return home. Someone pulled off his helmet and he realized he was not alone. He stretched his hand and touched something of the size of a tree trunk. It had a hairy arm. He knew this must be the ogre. Watanabe slashed at the arm and quickly regretted it as the ogre came into sight. The ogre's arm. The ogre stood before Watanabe, as tall as the gate. His eyes were shiny, and from his mouth, fire shot forth. Watanabe held firm and attacked the ogre. For hours, they fought with all their strength. The ogre realized that the knight was dangerous and he could not frighten him. Though the ogre was wounded, he ran into the forest. Watanabe chased him, but he could not find the ogre. At dawn, he returned to the gate and saw the ogre's arm he had cut off. Watanabe carried the ogre's arm home to show his friends. They were all proud and the story quickly spread. The people of Kyoto were overjoyed. They felt safe and honored Watanabe as their hero. The accomplishment was tempered with the news that there was an angry one-armed ogre out there somewhere who wanted that arm back. Watanabe sealed the arm in an iron box and kept it in his room, always under his eye. The ogre returns. After a year, one night, an old lady knocked at Watanabe's door. She claimed to be his nurse when he was a baby. The servant let her in. The lady smiled at Watanabe. "Is it true you cut off the ogre's arm?" she asked. "Can I see such a treasure?" Watanabe refused to show the ogre's arm. But the lady begged and wept. Overcome with pity, he took out the box and opened it for her. She leaned, plunged her hand inside the box, and grabbed the arm. "I have got my arm back," she cried, and was transformed into an ogre. Watanabe attacked the ogre and they fought for hours. But soon, the ogre burst through the roof and vanished into the clouds. Watanabe was happy and knew that ogre would never return to Kyoto. The ogre was afraid of Watanabe's courage. The ogre never returned, and the people of Kyoto thanked the brave knight. Kosai Osho and the Sea Turtles. Once upon a time in Bingo province, there was a great temple called Mitani Dera. When the temple was built, there was no gold for adorning the image of the Buddha. The people of the province went to meet a priest called Kosai Osho. They asked the priest to take the different kinds of produce by boat to Kyoto and sell them for gold. After completing his tasks, Kosai went to the port of Osaka. He was about to board the boat for home. Suddenly, he saw some fishermen who were about to kill the 4 big turtles they had caught. His heart was moved. He paid to the fishermen and bought the turtles. Then he let them loose in the sea. He set sail soon after that. But while returning, a pirate ship appeared. The pirates held 2 of his attendants and they threw them into the sea. Kosai Osho and the pirates. Now, the pirates turned towards Kosai and said, "You go into the sea too. If you won't go by yourself, we will throw you like your attendants." With no other option, Kosai climbed overboard to jump. The pirates rowed off with the boat loaded with gold. As he jumped into the sea, Kosai landed upon something like a rock. He stood on it the whole night. In the morning, he looked closely, and what he thought was a rock was actually a huge turtle shell. On returning to his own village, he told this strange story. Everybody praised him for his kindness towards the turtles, who had repaid his kindness. A big temple was now built. Some men came there to sell gold. Kosai went out to see. Among them were 6 of those pirates. They recognized Kosai. But Kosai only told them the price of the trade and gave it to them. The wicked pirates took the money and silently went away. The Magic Kettle. Once, a poor man was walking through the woods. He found a tanuki caught in a trap. Overcome with pity, he set him free. That night, the tanuki visited the poor man. The tanuki said, "Thank you for your kindness. As a token of my gratitude, I will tell you something very important. The priest at the Morinji temple is looking for a tea kettle. I will disguise myself as a tea kettle and then you sell it to him." The tanuki transformed himself into a wonderful gold tea kettle. The man was surprised. He took the kettle to the priest, who was glad to see it. He paid a high amount for it. The priest took the tea kettle to the temple and ordered a new priest to wash it. The new priest went to the river and started washing it. Suddenly, the tea kettle cried, "You are hurting my bottom." The new priest was shocked and told the priest. But the priest did not believe him. The tanuki. The priest then boiled some water. He filled the tea kettle and placed it on the fire. The tanuki screamed, "It's hot!" Unable to bear the flames, the tanuki transformed back into his true form and rushed back to the poor man. The tanuki gave an idea to the poor man. "Let's go into the town. I will remain in this tea kettle form and perform a tightrope walk." The next day, they went to the town for a show. "Come and see the amazing tea kettle tightrope walking show," he loudly announced. Inside, the tanuki tea kettle lightly walked across the rope and sang. Quickly, the word spread that there was a magic tea kettle that performed stunts. It became famous and the spectators kept increasing. The poor man became rich. Eventually, the tanuki remained in the form of the tea kettle and lost its ability to move. It was returned to the priest at the temple and kept as a valuable temple treasure. The Old Man with the Lump. Once upon a time, there lived an old man who had a lump on the left side of his face. He felt the lump irritating and did everything to remove it, but could not. So, he kept himself away from people. With time, the lump got bigger. He lost all hope and knew that he had to live with the lump throughout his life. One day, he went to the forest to cut wood. It started raining and the strong wind blew. The old man was afraid and hid inside the hollow of an old tree. He waited for the rain to stop. Then he heard some voices in the distance. Soon, the voices started coming closer and closer. He looked out of the hollow and saw some ogres setting a great fire. Thereupon, they started drinking, singing, and dancing. Watching them having so much fun, the old man no longer felt scared. The old man lost his lump. The old man found it so engaging that he dashed out of the hollow and began dancing. The ogres were surprised to see the old man. They laughed and were impressed by the way the old man danced. The ogres praised him, and their leader told the old man to come every night and dance with them. The old man promised to come every night. But some of the ogres were not convinced. We must take something from him of value so that he may keep his promise. Then they told the leader to take off his lump as it was considered good luck and he would miss it very much. The leader was convinced. He grabbed the old man's lump and wriggled it off without any pain. Now, all the ogres ran away before the sunrise. The old man was overjoyed to feel his face to be smooth and without a lump. He forgot about cutting wood and hurried home. The old man and the neighbor. When the old man returned home, his wife was happy to see him without the lump. The old man told her everything about the previous night. Another old man, who lived next door, had a lump on his right cheek. He had also tried to remove his lump, but could never get rid of it. When he listened to the story of the first old man, he decided to do the same. He asked the first old man how he had done it. The good old man told his neighbor how he got his lump taken off. He told him how he heard voices in the distance when he was hiding, the appearance of the ogre, and dancing. So the next day, the old neighbor found the same hollow tree and hid inside and waited for the ogres to come. Soon, the ogres came and started dancing. Their leader waited for the old man. The neighbor with 2 lumps. Hearing the leader talk of the old man, the second old man came out from the hollow and appeared before him. The leader thought that he was the same old man from the previous night. He asked the second old man to dance for them. The old neighbor did not know how to dance. He did whatever he could to impress the ogres. But the ogres were unhappy and scoffed at the neighbor. Angry and disappointed, the leader gave back the lump he took as a promise. He threw it onto the second neighbor's left cheek. The lump stuck on his face. He tried to pull it off but could not. The ogres went away and the selfish old man returned home, now with 2 lumps. The willow tree. Once in a certain village of Japan, a beautiful willow tree stood near the center. People loved the tree and admired it for its beauty and strength. A young farmer named Haitaro lived with his family near this tree. Every morning when he woke up, he saw the tree from his bedroom window. One day, an old man of the village came to Haitaro and told him that the villagers wanted to build a bridge over the river. They wanted to cut down the willow tree for timber. For timber? Said Haitaro sadly. My dear willow tree, for a bridge? Never, never. Haitaro was in a shock. When he recovered himself, he offered to give some of his own trees if the old man and the villagers would accept them for timber and spare the willow tree. The old man accepted this offer. The willow tree was saved. Haitaro and the stranger. Haitaro thanked the villagers. Now he began visiting the willow tree every morning and every night to pray. One night, he stood below the branches of the willow tree and thanked gods that the tree was spared. While praying, he saw something moving. He went closer and saw a beautiful woman standing there. He walked up to her and bowed. He asked her if she was waiting for someone. He will not come, she said, smiling sweetly at him, and then she disappeared. The next night, he saw that woman again. This time, she came forward and greeted him. The next night, they met again. Night after night, they met under the old willow tree. The young woman told Haitaro that her name was Kaori. But when he began asking her more questions, she stopped him. Ask me nothing more about my family, she said. Haitaro thought that she was shy and asked her nothing more. The marriage. The next night they met again. Soon they fell in love with each other. One night, Haitaro asked her, "Will you marry me?" "I will, but you will not ask me any questions. I have no family," said Kaori. Haitaro and Kaori were married, and the following year they were blessed with a child. They were the happiest people in Japan. The years passed by. One day, great news came to the village. The ex-emperor, Toba, wished to build a temple in the honor of Konon, the goddess of mercy. He needed timber from every village. The villagers said that they must contribute by presenting their great willow tree. Haitaro was in a great shock when he heard this. Haitaro argued a lot to give other trees instead of the willow tree, but the elders of the village did not agree with him. The Willow Wife. One night, when Haitaro, his wife, and their child were sleeping, Haitaro was suddenly awakened by the sound of axes chopping. To his surprise, he found his wife sitting up, looking seriously at him. The tears rolled down her cheeks. She whispered into Haitaro's ear, "My hair is falling from my body." "What do you mean?" Haitaro asked. The next moment, she fell to the ground. She was trembling and he could do nothing to help her. Suddenly, there was a loud crash outside. In that instant, his wife disappeared. "Where are you, Kaori?" he cried. What was left was only a branch of golden willow leaves. She was the soul of the willow tree. Haitaro and his daughter mourned deeply. Willow wife had gone. The water spider. One summer evening, a man living in Oshu went fishing in a pond at Handayama. He caught many fish and his basket was full up to the brim. To cool himself, the man soaked his bare feet in the pond. Suddenly, a water spider came out of the pond and fastened his thread onto the man's big toe. The spider went into the pond and came out again. He now fastened another thread on the same place. The man found it quite strange. He carefully unfastened the thread from his toe and tied it around the willow stump beside him. Suddenly, someone screamed from the bottom of the pond, "Jera and Sero and the rest of you, come here." The man was amazed. All the fish from his basket leapt out and went back in the pond. And right before his eyes, the spider's thread was pulled and the thick stump broke off. From then on, no one went fishing in that pond. The Yaroka Flood. Once upon a time, in the village of Ibori in Owari, there was a heavy downpour. As a result, the Kiso River rose higher and higher. The villagers were scared that the barriers might break. So they set up a watch by the flood. One night, a voice called out from the depths of Mino no Ikiyama on the opposite bank. It said, "Yaroka, Yaroka." The villagers could not understand it and found it really strange. They did not know what to do and just stared at each other. The voice kept on calling, "Yaroka, Yaroka." Finally, one of the villagers instinctively shouted, "If you are going to let go, let go." The moment he said this, a great wall of water came rushing through. The fields everywhere were covered by the flood. The villagers were shocked and did not know what to do. Even at present, that flood is spoken of as the Yaroka flood. Goshinro Pond. Once upon a time, in the village of Yawata in Higo province, there was an old pond near the stream. it was decided that the pond needed to be drained and the fish taken out. Finally, the day arrived, and at early morning, all the villagers gathered and started dipping the water out. They kept working throughout the day, but still could not empty the pond. The sun began to set. The villagers thought that they had almost reached the bottom. All of a sudden, a man, such as they had never seen before, rose up out of the pond. The villagers were frightened. "You've all been to great trouble," said the man, and he disappeared. The water then rose back up to the brim of the pond. From then on, the pond had been called Goshinro, and nobody tried to catch fish in it. The Yamachichi. Once upon a time, there lived a cooper in a certain village of Japan. One morning, when he went out to work, he saw that it had snowed. Suddenly, a frightful monster with only one eye and one leg appeared in front of him. Looking at him, the cooper thought, "This must be Yamachichi, which I have heard about in stories." The monster at once said, "You are thinking I must be Yamachichi, aren't you?" The cooper thought, "How terrible! He observes right away what I think." Then the monster said, "Say, Cooper, you think it is terrible because I observe right away what you think, don't you?" Whatever the cooper thought was observed until he was confused. But the cooper kept working. Suddenly, his frozen hands slipped. The bamboo hoop that was lying in front of him sprang out and slapped Yamachichi in the face. Yamachichi was surprised. "These human beings are dangerous," he thought, and went back to the mountain. Saburo and Otsuyu. Long ago, there lived a young man named Saburo. He was born into a rich family of business persons. He fell in love with a beautiful woman named Otsuyu. Their love was a happy and blossoming kind of love, like a beautiful peony flower. They met in secret for some time and then decided to get married. But before they could get married, Saburo fell ill and could not meet Otsuyu for a long time. When he recovered, he went out in search of Otsuyu. He looked for her everywhere, but what he got was bad news. A man told him that Otsuyu had died some time ago. Saburo was heartbroken. He loved her very much. He grieved her loss every day. That year, on the Obon festival, he prayed for her soul to visit him. The Peony Lantern. After praying, Saburo went towards his home at night. Soon, he was approached by a beautiful lady and her maid. They carried a peony lantern with them. When the light of the peony lantern fell on the lady's face, Saburo was shocked. She looked like Otsuyu. He could not believe his eyes and ran towards her. Before he could even utter a word, the lady started crying. She said, "Dear Saburo, my aunt told me that you died of illness. I was heartbroken and was about to leave the town with my maid. But here you are, standing in front of me. I am so happy to see you." Saburo was filled with joy. He hugged and kissed Otsuyu, and he invited the two women to his house. That night, he held Otsuyu in his arms, and they slept together. Reunited, they again started meeting in secret. The revelation. One of Saburo's servants became curious of his master's visitors every night. So one night, he peeked into Saburo's room to see what was happening. What he saw shocked him. He saw a corpse lying beside Saburo, and it moved and turned as if it was really sleeping. In the next room, he saw another corpse with two peony lanterns beside it. The servant ran to the temple and told the priest what he saw in Saburo's house. The priest revealed that Otsuyu and her maid died on their journey out of the town. Saburo's aunt had planned it all because Otsuyu's family was a business rival. She did not want Otsuyu to be married to Saburo, so she tricked her into exile by Saburo's framed death. The next day, the priest came to Saburo's house and prayed to keep the spirits away. He also kept Ofuda around the house to keep away the ghosts of Otsuyu and her maid. The reunion. Every night, Otsuyu and her maid stood outside Saburo's house. She cried and called out his name. She desperately wanted to meet him. Inside, Saburo suffered because he realized that he was going to be separated from Otsuyu again. "Please, I want to see her," he begged his family and servants. He didn't want to be separated from her again. He stopped eating and sleeping. As a result, his health deteriorated. His family was afraid that Saburo would die of heartbreak. They finally asked the priest to remove the talismans kept around the house. That night, no voice called out Saburo's name. It was a quiet night. The next day, Saburo was found lying dead. His body was entwined around a skeleton. On his face was a smile. a pure bliss. The Old Man and the Wood. Once upon a time, an old man lived in the mountains of Japan's Higo province. He made his living by cutting down firewood in the mountains and then selling it in the town of Seki. One day, there were no customers and he could not buy any wood. Finally, he went to the river bridge that ran through the middle of the town. He walked on the bridge from one side to the other, trying to sell the wood. But there wasn't a single person who would buy it. Tired, he sat at the middle of the bridge to rest. Feeling annoyed, he threw the bundles of wood into the river. Then he prayed to the river goddess and started walking home. Little runny-nosed boy. As soon as the old man started walking, a beautiful woman appeared out of the deep waters and asked the old man to stop. She was carrying a little child on her arm. "You are an honest person and work hard every day," she said. She continued, "The river goddess is very pleased with you. Today, you have offered your firewood to her. She wants to reward you. Take this child as a reward. He is called Little Runny-Nosed Boy. He will give you whatever you wish for. But in exchange, you must prepare for him a dish of fresh shrimp served with vinegar 3 times a day." The woman handed over the child to the old man and sank again to the bottom of the river. Feeling happy, the old man carried Little Runny-Nosed Boy to his home. The new home. After reaching home, the old man kept the child on his altar shelf and took great care of him. Whether it was money or something to eat or anything else, whatever the old man asked for, the little runny-nosed boy would get for him. He would just blow his nose, and the things would appear before the old man's eyes. Once, the old man said, "This house is too small and dirty. Please bring a cleaner and a bigger home for me." Little runny-nosed boy blew his nose, and a fine house came forth. It was a bigger and a better house than the old man had wished for. Gradually, the home became bigger. A storehouse appeared, and there were all kinds of furnishings. Within a month, the old man became rich. He no longer had to go to cut firewood. His only work was to buy shrimp for the little runny-nosed boy. Little runny-nosed boy disappears. As months passed by, this single work of collecting shrimp became bothersome for the old man. Finally, he picked up the little runny-nosed boy from the altar shelf and said, "Little runny-nosed boy, you have given me everything, and now there is nothing I could ask for. Please go back to the river goddess. Give her my kind regards." On hearing this, the little runny-nosed boy went out without uttering a word. For some time, he could be heard outside, blowing his nose. Meanwhile, the storehouse, all the things in the house, and the house itself started disappearing. Ultimately, an old dirty house stood in front of the old man. Like a madman, he rushed out to bring little runny-nosed boy back. But he was nowhere to be found. The Woodcutter and Princess Yasunaga. Once, there lived an old woodcutter in the village of Motoda in Okinokuni. One day, he went along the Yasunaga river to cut wood in the mountain above the waterfall. By mistake, the axe slipped from his hands and fell into the little round pool at the foot of the waterfall. Suddenly, waves began to stir up in the pool. A thick mist rose, and it became dark all around. The woodcutter saw something like a big black stick covered with thorns coming out of the water. Frightened, the woodcutter ran as fast as he could. A gentle voice called him from behind. "Old man, please wait a bit." He looked around and saw a lovely damsel, as beautiful as a picture, standing at the waterfall. "I am Princess Yasunaga," she said. "I have been living in this pool for ages. But some time ago, a huge crab came and started living here. He has been tormenting me day and night. Crab Pool and Princess Yasunaga. Princess Yasunaga then said to the woodcutter that when his axe dropped, it cut off one of the arms of that wicked crab, weakening his strength. So he must have seen that big arm with thorns floating away. The crab groaned in pain and hid in a ledge at the bottom of the pool. She requested the woodcutter to let the axe fall again from the top of the waterfall. She handed him his axe. Afraid, he threw his axe from the top into the basin at the falls. Money and fame and long life, or whatever you ask, shall be yours, even as you ask for it, said the pleased water spirit. And she returned to the forest. After a few days, the villagers discovered the shell of a dead crab. Both its arms were missing, which had been washed down to the mouth of the river at the sea. Since then, the river is called Yasunaga River, and the basin of the waterfall is called Crab Pool. The Demon and Shinriki Bow. Long time ago, Shinriki Bow lived in a big house in Sakamoto Hachiman. A devil from Chichibu Mountain came to his house daily. He used to demand huge quantities of wine and feasts and made many unreasonable demands. The priest was in great trouble. He wanted to teach the devil a lesson. So he thought of a plan so that the devil might never come to his house. Shinriki Bow asked the villagers to cut all the wheat in a single day if the devil came along. Then, for delicacies to serve with wine, the priest cut white stones into squares and bamboo roots into rings and set them out. He cooked some white bean curd and bamboo sprouts and placed them on a separate dish for himself. Unaware, the devil came along in his usual way to eat a big feast. But the stones and the bamboo rings were so hard that his teeth could not bite them. The devil and the human. The devil was puzzled. On the other hand, Shinriki Bow, the host, sat calmly and ate his bean curd and bamboo sprouts, licking his lips. "How about it, Mr. Devil?" he remarked. "With such strong teeth, we humans can chew anything that we feel like eating. And that is not all. We can also turn land upside down and skin it. Come out and have a look." He led the devil out of his house to show him. What had been a field of ripe golden wheat when the devil came that morning was completely harvested during the day. It was only black soil that now remained in the field. Seeing this, the devil thought, "Men are really greater than devils, and devils can never risk parading around before them carelessly." He never came to the village again. The Little Boat. Once upon a time in Japan, there was a brave samurai named Awazuno Kaja in Omi province. He had built a temple, but there was no bell to hang in it. So, he decided to go and buy the iron required to construct the bell. He arranged for a boat and set out from Echizen to look for iron in Izumo province. While he was sailing through the Japan Sea, all of a sudden, the wind rose and the waves came washing over. It became difficult for the boat to move ahead. The crew and the passengers were all worried and scared. Suddenly, they saw a small boat appearing. As it came nearer, they saw that there was only a small child in it steering. "There is a man named Awazuno Kanja on that boat," I think, he said. Can you please hurry and get into this little boat? The Dragon Palace. Awazu no Kanja found it quite strange. He didn't know why the boy called him. But still, he went over into the little boat. Suddenly, the wind and the waves disappeared, and the big boat stood where it was. Wait here for some time, the little boy ordered the big boat. Soon, the little boat reached the bottom of the sea. It stopped in front of the gate of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon King came out to meet Awazu no Kanja. The Dragoon King asked for his help. He knew that Awazu no Kanja was famous in the entire world for his skill with the bow and arrows. I want you to undertake an urgent task for me. Presently, the sea palace is threatened by a great enemy who comes with his followers and attacks us every day. With the power of your bow, you can destroy the enemy and save us. The Serpent. This task was not only adventurous for Awazu no Kanja, but also a matter of great honor. So he accepted it. He climbed to the high tower of the palace to make his preparations and waited. At a distance, he saw a huge serpent coming with his followers to attack the Dragon King. Awazu no Kanja kept his eyes on the serpent only, who was coming towards him with the great open mouth. He stood before the serpent and sent his shaft, piercing it from the root of its tongue to the base of its throat. The serpent was worried and tried to run away. But this time, Awazu no Kanja sent an arrow to the center of its body. The serpent was killed. The Dragon King and all his subjects were filled with joy. They wanted to reward Awazu no Kanja and asked him what reward he wanted. The bell from the Dragon Palace. Awazu no Kanja humbly replied that the only reason for his trip was that the temple he had built had no bell to be hung. He had set out to buy iron for the bell and was crossing the sea to Izumo for it. He had no other wish or desire. That is very simple, said the Dragon King. He at once took down the bell which hung at the gate of the Dragon Palace and gave it as a gift to Awazu no Kanja. It is believed that the bell of the Kokoji at Awazu in Omi was the gift from the Dragon King. But the temple had completely disappeared. It is also believed that the bell which hung at Mandera and which, according to legend, Musashi Bobenki carried halfway up Haizen and sent rolling down was the bell of the Dragon Palace. But nobody knows for certain what the truth is. The Man and the Fox. Long ago, in a certain village, there lived a bad fox who occasionally came out and did some mischief. In the same village lived a proud man who always boasted, "No fox can ever disguise himself to me." One day, when the man was going home, he saw a fox on the sandbar of the river. The fox put broad magnolia leaves on his head and turned himself into a woman. Then she pulled duckweed from the river, rolled it up into the shape of a baby, and held it in her arms. The man saw everything and became furious. "You dirty beast! You are trying to befool me, aren't you? All right, just see what happens." He picked up a huge stone from the side of the road and threw it at the child, hitting it on the head and killing it with the single shot. The mother cried and fumed. "Give me back my child the way it was." "Why? Are you not a fox?" he retorted. Tricked into becoming a priest. The woman became angrier and she would not be pacified. The man waited for a long time, but she did not turn into a fox again. He was finally convinced that he had done a shameful task. Although he apologized to her until he ran out of words, she couldn't be convinced to forgive him so easily. "Then if nothing else does, I'll become a priest to redeem for this," said the man. Both of them went to a temple nearby, where he explained everything to the priest and got his head shaved. When the priest shaved his head, it hurt him so much that he came back to his senses and looked around. The woman and her child had disappeared. Moreover, there was neither the priest nor the temple. The man's hair, which he thought had been shaved off, was actually chewed off by a fox. Shibemon Badger. Once upon a time, Hage Badger of Awa came to meet Shibemon Badger and suggested him that they should compare their abilities to disguise themselves. Shibemon agreed and crossed the sea to Awa province. To begin with, Hage Badger displayed a disguise which looked like the feudal lord of Awa crossing the sea. There were many ships and steamers lined up in assortment. One could see all kinds of banners flying in the wind. The voices of sailors could be heard singing on the state barge. Shibemon admired him a lot. "I have never seen such a clever disguise before. In return, I want to show you the illusion of a feudal lord's pageant. On a certain day before noon, go to the beach at Maiko and look on from the top of that pine tree. In a few days, Hedge Badger crossed over to Banshu. He climbed up the pine tree on the beach at Maiko and waited. Shibemon Badger befools Hedge Badger. After a while, a feudal pageant came from the west. There were innumerable feather-adorned lances upraised and with the sword. Down on your knees, down on your knees. The horses and sedan chairs were glittered with ornaments. The samurai looked brutal. Hedge Badger was totally carried away with admiration. Without a moment's thought, he raised his hands up in the pine tree and started clapping. He said, "Impressive, Lord Shibemon. It is exactly like the real pageant." The admiration of Hedge Badger was not without a reason. It actually was a real feudal lord's pageant. Shibemon had known of the tour beforehand and exhibited it to Hedge Badger. The samurai in the pageant discovered Hedge Badger and exclaimed, "Look, a badger is jeering at us from a high place like that." They called him ill-mannered. They quickly rushed towards him and brought him down with their lances. The renowned Hedge Badger of Shikoku was thus befooled by Shibemon Badger and died. Kogoro, the charcoal maker. Long ago, there was a famous choja at Mano in Bingo. Before becoming famous, he was a humble, hard-working youth named Kogoro, the charcoal maker. He had built a little hut at Uchiyama in Mai and lived alone, baking charcoal for a living. One day, a beautiful lady from the capital city came to meet Kogoro, the charcoal maker, in his little hut. There was a revelation from Kanan-sama at the Kiyomizu temple, and that's the reason I have come to your house to marry you. She said, "Please allow me to stay with you as your bride from today. I am very glad that you have come all the way from the capital, especially to be my bride," answered Kogoro. "But today, I don't have enough food for the two of us to eat." "Then please go to the town and buy some rice," the lady said. Kogoro and the ducks. The lady had a brocade bag with her. She took out 2 gold coins and gave them to Kogoro. He took the gold coins and went down the mountain to town to buy food. A stream ran at the foot of Uchiyama. On the banks of the stream, there was a forest of purple willows, and in their shadows lay a silent pool. As Kogoro was walking along the path through the forest, he saw a pair of mandarin ducks on the surface of the pool. He stopped still. He took out the gold coins and, using them as pellets, he threw them at the ducks. The aim was good, but the ducks flew away, and the coins sank to the bottom of the pool. Kogoro went back up to his little hut in the mountain because he no longer had the coins to buy the food. The little stones. When Kogoro reached home, the lady asked him about the food. Kogoro told her how he found some water birds on the way and wanted to catch them for her. But he lost both the gold coins and the birds. When she heard this, the young lady was sad. Those were valuable treasures called koban, she said. With just those 2 gold coins, you could have bought lots of rice and fish and fowl. What have you done? Kogoro, the charcoal maker, was surprised. He had never heard of such a treasure called koban. I had no idea that those stones were such priceless treasures, he declared. He said that there were many such little stones lying in the hills behind his hut. Speedily, both of them lighted the torches and went to see behind the hut. It was exactly as Kogoro had said. There were many little stones scattered all around, and they were pure virgin gold. Kogoro becomes rich. Kogoro and the lady gathered all the stones and carried them inside the hut. In a small period of time, the house was so full of them that they piled them up on the outside. When the people in the town and village heard of it, they all came one after another and brought all kinds of things to sell. To get a share of the gold, they all came to their hut to work for them. Thereafter, Kogoro became rich and established the big estate at Uchiyama in Mai. He also built a temple for Kannon and worshipped her. A little girl, as beautiful as a rare jewel, was born to Kogoro, and later she was sent to the capital as a consort. He continued to prosper, but because Kogoro had been a charcoal maker formerly, people always called him the charcoal maker Choja. The New Year's Eve. Once upon a time, there was a poor pack horse leader who lived in the country. It was New Year's Eve, but there was no work. So he decided to return home without a load on his horse. Suddenly, his eyes fell on a beggar who lay in the shade of the pine trees that grew along the highway. The pack horse leader loaded the beggar onto his horse and took him home. He and his wife spread a straw mat on the dirt floor and carefully laid the beggar onto it. Then they covered him with straw matting. They had no food to give the beggar. Hence, they built a good fire by him. The next day was New Year's Day. It was almost noontime, but the beggar did not get up. The man and his wife called him. The beggar did not reply. When they pulled off the straw matting, they were shocked. Instead of the beggar, there was a lump of gold. The pack horse leader became a rich man. The Jizo with sedge hats. Once upon a time, in a certain village, there lived an old couple. The old man earned his living by selling sedge hats in the town. As usual, on New Year's Eve, he went to the town to sell his hats. But he could not sell even a single hat. Tired, he loaded the hats on his back and decided to go back home. On the way, a storm came up. The Jizo images in the middle of the field seemed to be cold and wet. He took out 6 sedge hats and put them on the heads of 6 Jizo images. When he reached home, he told his wife about the Jizo images. As the new year approached, the old couple could hear the sound of sleds and the voices singing. Who put on the sedge hats? Soon, the voices that sang came closer. The old couple ran to the door calling, "Here we are!" They were amazed to see the bags of treasure lying at their door. At the distance, they saw the Jizo images going away. The Sparrow Shrine. Once in Yashu, there was a strange man who always boasted that he could swallow a manju in one gulp. His neighbor, a bad man, knew of this man's weirdo. So one day, he put a needle in his manju. As usual, the man ate it in one gulp. He felt a severe pain in his stomach. Quickly he went to bed. Lying on his bed, he looked out of the window. A sparrow repeatedly came to the leaf patch, eating the tops. The man watched it every day. One day, he saw, coming out of the sparrow's tail, a small piece of needle wrapped around with a leek. He thought, if I also eat leeks, the needle would come out. When he ate many leeks, the needle actually came out and his pain disappeared. The man built a little shrine which he called Sparrow Shrine. The defied guild heads. Once, a fish seller in Tosa province was going from the beach to a village back in the mountains to sell fish. On a lonely road, he noticed a copper pheasant caught in a net among the trees. He wanted that bird, but he thought, it is not right to take it without paying. He took out the pheasant. In return, he took 3 gilt heads from his basket and put them in the net. Then, he carried the pheasant home. The villagers who came along thought it very strange that gilt heads were in the mountain. They thought that it was a sign from God, and so they built a shrine there. They worshipped the 3 gilt heads and called the shrine Kurodai Shansho Gongen, meaning the temporary manifestation of heaven in the 3 gilt heads. The Maiden with the Wooden Bowl. Long ago, there lived an old couple with their only daughter who was extremely beautiful. The father felt sick and passed away. The widow had to work hard to earn their daily needs. She was also worried about her daughter's future. One day, she called her child and said, "Dear, your father lies far away in a cemetery, and I, being old, need to follow him soon. The thought of leaving you alone troubles me." She was afraid that her daughter's beauty might destroy her future. So, she put a wooden bowl upon the daughter's head so that it might hide her beauty. "This bowl will always protect you after I have left. Never remove it." Soon, the old woman died, and the girl had to work in the rice field to earn her living. Everyone noticed her, and soon she came to be known as the maiden with the bowl on her head. People laughed at her and tried to peep under the bowl. The Maiden and the Rich Farmer. One day, when the maiden was working in the fields, a rich farmer saw her and went towards her. He was impressed by her diligence and hard work. Watching her work throughout the day, he was so pleased with her work that he asked her to work in her fields until the end of harvest season. After the harvest season, he asked her to become an inmate of his house. "My wife is ill," he added, "and I should like you to nurse her for me." The maiden accepted his offer. She looked after the sick women with every care. As the farmer and his wife had no daughter, they loved her as their own child. After a few days, the farmer's son came to visit them. He was awestruck to see the maiden with the wooden bowl on her head. He asked his father who she was and why she wore a bowl upon her head. The Rich Farmer's Son. The farmer told his son the sad story of the maiden. He was greatly touched. As the days passed by, he became fond of her and fell in love. He decided to marry her. All his friends and relatives were opposed to this marriage. They said that she was only a servant, and what if the bowl was removed and she turned out to be ugly and not beautiful? But the young boy went and proposed to her. She refused and said, "I can't marry you. I am a servant in your father's house." She cried and fell asleep. That night, in a dream, her mother came to her and said, "My dear child, don't trouble your heart. Follow what your heart says. Marry the farmer's son, and all will be well again." The next morning, the maiden woke up smiling and full of joy. When the farmer's son came and asked her again for marriage? She agreed. The bowl breaks. When all the plans for the wedding were settled, the maiden thought that her bowl should be removed now. The maiden herself tried to remove the bowl, but it was firmly fixed. Some of the relatives tried to help her, but when they attempted to remove the bowl, it uttered strange cries. The farmer's son said to her, "I love you with or without the wooden bowl." He ordered the wedding feast to proceed. Then, the wine cups were brought into the hall. The bride and the groom were expected to drink together. Just as she brought the wine cup to her lips, the bowl on her head broke with a bang, and gold and silver and precious stones fell from it. The guests looked at it with amazement, but they were more amazed to see that the maiden was the most beautiful lady in Japan. The maiden, who was once a beggar, became rich. The two merchants. Long ago, Sanya, a poor merchant of Hyuga, went on a journey with another merchant. It was a hot day and they were going along a lonely mountain road. They walked and then decided to rest for a while under a tree. They lay in the shade of a tree by the side of the road, and the friend quickly fell asleep. While Sanya watched his friend sleeping, he saw something strange. A bee came, went in, and then darted out of one of the man's nostrils. That was strange, Sanya thought. But then the bee returned again, moved around the man's face, and then disappeared. The friend awoke and said, "I had a weirdest dream just now." "What did you dream?" Sanya asked. He replied, "It might have been in a mountain near here that I found a valley which was full of gold while I was walking around. The merchant who bought a dream. "That was truly a good dream," said Sanya. "Please tell that dream to me." "What does a dream amount to?" exclaimed his friend. "How much will you pay for it?" Finally, after some persuasion and negotiation, Sanya bought the dream from his friend. He traveled in search of the region and went over mountain after mountain, searching every day as watchfully as he could. At last, he discovered the gold mine called tofuku. During Sanya's generation, it yielded as much gold as had been dreamed. He became the richest man in Kyushu. He also gave a lot of gold to his friend from whom he bought the dream. The strange thing was that when Sanya died, there was an earthquake and the mountain crumbled down. Presently, there is only a swamp left. Plum Tree Estate. Once upon a time, there was a choja named Sukimon at Nameshida village in Oshu. There was a tradition in their family that was carried down from generation to generation. It was that no matter how poor they became, and even if the times were so bad that they had to sell their estate, they were reprimanded to sell the plum tree that grew in the front yard. They were to be sure to dig it up and take it with them, whatever happened. Sukimon thought that he could never become poor. But times changed and he became poor and had to sell his estate. However, Sukimon did not forget the tradition of his forefathers, and he decided to dig up the plum tree to take it to the little neighboring estate where he was shifting. While they were digging, the spade suddenly struck a huge old earthen jar with a click. Taking off the lid, they found a heap of gold coins. The estate disappears. Everyone in the house was overjoyed and took out the gold coins to pay off their debts. Now, they did not have to sell their estate. Moreover, they bought a new estate, which was more splendid than their earlier estate. They were again rich. There were still other old plum trees on this estate of Sukimon, which they left behind. The descendants remembered the story of the gold coins, which came out of the jar under that tree. So they passed their days comfortably in luxury. They took everything easily and did nothing. With whole family lazing out and doing nothing, they began to become poor. Quickly, they started digging at the roots of other plum trees. One by one, they dug under all the trees, but they did not find any treasure. At the end, the house and all the plum trees disappeared. What was left was only a patch of garden, but people continued to call it Plum Tree Estate. The wife. Once upon a time, there was a man named Saburobe at Mangyo in Noto province. One night, the man went out. When he came back, he saw two wives in his room. He was sure that one of them was a goblin. Amazingly, there was no difference between their appearance or manners or the way they talked. He tried all kinds of tricks and asked them many kinds of questions. Both of them answered everything easily. Saburobe was perplexed and did not know what to do. At last, Saburobe had a little doubt on one of them. So, he drove her out of the house and let the other stay in the house as his wife. Soon, he prospered and had two sons. The children grew up. One day, when they were playing hide and seek at home, they discovered that their mother had a tail. The fox wife. Now, when the truth was revealed, she could no longer stay in the house. The truth is that I was a fox, she said. She cried and ran outside the house, leaving the children behind. After a few days, it was time for the rice grains to form. The fox wife walked around Saburobe's rice field and chanted, "Be fruitful, but hide the ears." This she did every year. And when the rice controllers came to inspect, they always excused Saburobe's family from payments because the rice grains at only Saburobe's house never seemed to fill in well. But at the time of harvesting, when Saburobe took the rice to his house to thresh, there was always a greater harvest than that of any other farmer who planted rice. As a result, Saburobe became richer and richer. The old man showered with gold. Once upon a time, in a certain village of Japan, there lived a good old man and a bad old man. One day, the good old man went into the mountains to work. Suddenly, he heard some voices calling from somewhere. The voices repeatedly asked him, "Shall we hold fast to you or stick fast to you?" Finally, without thinking anything, the old man replied, "If you want to hold fast, hold fast. If you want to stick fast, stick fast." At once, lumps of gold and silver came flying. The treasure landed on his shoulders and back until it made him groan. He carried all the gold and silver to his home and spread it out in front of his wife. The old man told her how he got the treasure. When they were talking and looking at the treasure, the bad old man watched them from the window. He was very jealous. The bad old man punished. The bad old man went to the couple's house. "I want to do that too, and bring home gold and silver on my back," he said. So the next day, the bad old man set out into the same mountains. As he had expected, the voices called him from both sides of the mountain. "Shall we stick fast to you or hold fast to you?" they called. In great excitement, the bad old man answered, "If you want to hold fast, hold fast. If you want to stick fast, stick fast." This time, a huge amount of pulp came flying down from the tops of the pine trees. It landed on the old man's shoulders and back until he was heavily loaded. He rushed home. "Granny, Granny, I'm home. Hurry, bring a light and let's see," he called. The old woman quickly brought the light. But as soon as she came close to the old man, the pulp caught fire. The old man was badly burnt. Thanks for watching. Do like, share
Subscribe to Sahil Book House.